Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 17th of June, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So just wanted to give a shout out here to a new account on Twitter that's been spun up by a Daily Gwei community member. You may have seen them around the Discord channel before. Their name is zkben.eth. Now they've set this kind of like a Twitter account, Daily Gwei _TV up, basically to share, I guess like segments from the Daily Gwei Refuel. So if you go to the page, you can obviously follow it. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But basically you can see little clips, like a 30-second clip from kind of like yesterday's refuel and what I was talking about with regards to the bear market, kind of like a few different summaries of what was spoken about on kind of like the refuel in terms of the topics and things like that, and then just more clips here. So this is really cool to see. I love that this is organic. I didn't approach ZK Ben about this. He kind of like came to me with it, and it's like, hey, this is an idea I've had, and I'm like, yeah, sure, go for it. This is awesome. Like, I think it's great that we can kind of condense down some of the things I say into more bite-sized things, especially and document them on Twitter, because often I'll have people asking if I've spoken about a topic before, and usually I have, but it's just very hard for me to go back through the refuels and search for that. So being able to search through it on Twitter would be really, really good there. So thank you again to kind of like ZK Ben for doing this. If you want to give your kudos to him in the Discord channel, feel free to do so as well there. But this is cool. I think this is going to be great. I'm really looking forward to just having these clips out there, having more people find the channel because of those clips as well. I think it acts as a nice little marketing and kind of like marketing and kind of like funnel into the Daily Gwei Refuel. So yeah, go give this account a follow. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so I think the biggest news of the last 24 hours was that Circle is launching a Euro stablecoin that they're calling naturally Euro coin, right? They have USD coin, which is USDC, and now they're going to have Euro coin, which is Euro C, which I guess looks weird when I look at it. USDC kind of like, I don't know, it just looks natural to me, but Euro C looks a little bit weird, but I guess like the ticker doesn't matter at the end of the day. But this coin will be going live on Ethereum mainnet and available to mint and redeem on June 30th. Now, this isn't the first time that there's been kind of like a Euro stablecoin attempted. There's a few out there. They have very low liquidity and market caps. I believe Tether's one is the largest, and it's quite low in terms of market cap and liquidity. It's just not very popular. Obviously, the entire ecosystem pretty much denominates in USD, and so does most of the world, right? Like USD is the world reserve currency. And also, there are some questions about Eurocoin, kind of people kind of questioning it, saying, the Euro right now isn't in a great spot. The EU isn't in a great spot. Like, are they just launching this at a time when kind of like the Euro seems like it's falling apart? I mean, maybe not, who knows, right? That's kind of something, I guess, more complicated to consider. But what I wanted to talk about was the chances of success within crypto of something like this. The hardest thing, I think, for stablecoins or for just maybe kind of like most anything that you would consider a payment token is network effect and integrations. And liquidity. And liquidity falls into network effect, but integrations and liquidity and network effect, right? If anyone's going to make a Euro stablecoin be successful, it's going to be Circle, because USD coin and USDC is obviously ultra successful. It is really the only contender to Tether. There is BUSD, but I guess like Binance was able to spin up their own stablecoin because they own an entire exchange, right? So they have like the liquidity there already and the integrations they can do there already. Binance is the world's biggest exchange. So I think Circles has a pretty good shot of kind of like doing this, because they have the connections, they have the integration partners, they have the market makers that can provide liquidity, they have the know-how of how to do this, right? They've already been doing that with USDC for a while now, and they've proved that they can grow something, and they have a lot of trust. It's a good brand. They have a lot of trust, a lot of I guess like they've already done a lot of the regulatory work. So I would say that this probably has a higher chance of success than kind of like the other ones out there. But it also depends on like what the appetite is for something like this. Honestly, I've never personally felt the need to ever interact with the euro, right? Like, unless I'm actually in Europe and traveling, I just have no use for it. But I mean, I'm in a unique position because I'm in Australia. I don't really use the USD stablecoins that much either. But I think that just generally the space is just going to continue to be denominated in USD. So from that perspective, the USD stablecoins will reign supreme for a very long time. They'll have the most liquidity, the most market cap, but it doesn't mean there can't be, I guess, like another stablecoin of another popular fiat currency. And I think this will obviously be very popular with people that are in Europe. So it's just easier for kind of like tax purposes. For example, in Australia, I don't know if this is kind of like true for every country in Europe or any of the countries in Europe, but in Australia, like it's a capital event every time I go between USD and AUD. So for example, if I buy USD with AUD and I hold it for like a week and then I make some money on it because it kind of like AUD went up against USD, well, any of the money I made on it is subject to capital gains tax. So it's just annoying taxable events on every single transaction. Doesn't matter the size of it. So I just avoid USD stablecoins most of the time. Like if I ever go into them, it's basically within the same day. Like I'll buy it and then I'll dispose of it in some way. Maybe I'll buy it because I want to go buy something on chain that's not available on a centralized exchange, or I'm doing kind of like one of my angel investments, which are usually done in stablecoins. But I think that's true for parts of Europe as well, where going to USD from Euro would incur these taxable events that are just super annoying. So being able to go to a kind of like a Euro stablecoin and denominate in that and trade in and out of that is just much easier from a tax perspective as well. So I think it's going to be popular with people in Europe for sure. And it hopefully brings more liquidity into the space as well from, I guess, like from Europe. I mean, the US is still the biggest market in crypto, but the European market isn't small, definitely not. And the Asia market's quite big as well. But I'm not sure if anyone dares attempt doing a yen stablecoin. Sorry, not a yen stablecoin, yuan stablecoin, just because China will probably crack down pretty hard on that. So I think that's why we haven't seen that yet. There's not really that many other popular fiat currencies that people are kind of like, I guess, banging on the door to have a stablecoin within crypto for. Like, I don't know anyone who wants an AUD stablecoin except people in Australia that are into crypto. And at this point in time, there's not that many people who would actually actively use an AUD stablecoin within Australia. So it doesn't really make much sense there. Same for even some of the most popular kind of like stablecoins out there. And then regulations is obviously something to consider as well. So I'm going to keep an eye on this, see how the Euro stablecoin goes. I think, as I said, Circle has a good shot here. They already have all the existing infrastructure, integrations, partnerships, connections, liquidity connections, all that sorts of stuff. They already have all of it in place. They know how to play the game when it comes to stablecoins. So we're going to see how this goes. And it goes without saying that this is 100% centralized. This is not an attempt at a decentralized Euro stablecoin. It is it's going to be exactly the same as USDC in terms of its centralization. It may or may not be more centralized just from the fact that it's a kind of like different currency. Depends on the regulations, but I mean, I would consider USDC to be 100% centralized right now anyway, so it can't be more than 100% centralized. So, but I don't think anyone kind of like is under the impression that this is something that is decentralized. So yeah, cool to see this. Going to keep an eye on it, that's for sure. All right, so I mentioned yesterday the Gray Glacier hard fork was announced to basically that's basically going to be happening on June 29th to delay the difficulty bomb by about 2 to 3 months. Now, this is the official announcement that has come off the Ethereum blog here, shared by Tim Byko, and you can see the block number that this is going to be triggered at. 15 million and 50,000 is the block number. All of the links to the relevant client downloads are in this blog post here with a bit more information there. And now, speaking of Tim Byko as well, I just wanted to quickly remind you guys that I am doing a Twitter Spaces today. By the time you watch this, I may have already done it, but I'm doing a Twitter Spaces today on the ssv.network Twitter account. So if you kind of like search that, you'll be able to find it. I'm doing it with Tim Byko. This is part of an 8-week educational series that I'm doing with ssv.network on the merge. And we're basically going to be I'm basically going to be interviewing different people, starting with Tim, and there's going to be a new guest each week for 8 weeks. Yeah, so looking forward to the conversation with Tim. A lot of it is going to be noob friendly. It is not going to be diving too deep into what's got to do with the merge. It's going to be very high level because the whole point of it is to basically educate newer people or educate people who may not know anything about the merge. And I can't wait to talk to Tim. I mean, he's obviously one of the foremost experts on everything got to do with the merge, and the conversation will go for about an hour. So hopefully we'll be able to cover a lot of the meaty stuff there. But you can go to ssv.network on Twitter and set a reminder for the spaces. It is, for reference, happening at 10 a.m. my time, so 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, whatever that is for you. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's evening in the US and very late European time, but it is going to be recorded, so don't stress if you can't make it to the live session there. All right, so there was this tweet today from the Bank of International Settlements talking about MEV, and they basically said minor extractable value in crypto and DeFi is so pervasive that at times it accounts for 1 out of every 30 Ethereum transactions. This market manipulation also crimps the capacity of the entire Ethereum blockchain, and they have a little chart here of MEV transactions versus kind of like normal ones, or kind of like gas used there. Oh, sorry, percentage of gas used there. What I find funny about like this tweet is that there is so much wrong with it that I can't help but laugh. What they get wrong is that they're implying that MEV or all MEV is pervasive, is toxic, when in reality, as I've explained before on the refuel, there's only, I mean, not only, but like there's specific things that are toxic, right? Sandwich attacks, front running, back running, time banded attacks, like those things are kind of the toxic MEV, right? But then there is normal MEV that happens in kind of like every market, and the most obvious of that is in arbitrage, right? Arbitraging the price between two different liquidity pools or two different exchanges. And that doesn't just happen within Ethereum or within blockchains. That happens on, I guess, like the traditional finance system as well. And there's actually something in the traditional finance system called payment for order flow, which is basically MEV. And, high frequency traders even go to the point of kind of like moving their operations as close as possible to the clearinghouse of the exchange in order to get the lowest latency possible to where it's kind of like cleared there. So MEV has existed within the traditional finance system since basically day one. And I think if you really take MEV to its logical conclusion in terms of like a concept, and don't focus on the M of MEV, focus on the EV, extractable value. If you take that to its logical conclusion, then basically what you're looking at is people will do whatever it takes to get the maximum value out of whatever financial transaction that they're trying to do, right? And it becomes a game of what gamers call min-maxing, which is basically eking out every little bit of efficiency that you can from the tools that you basically have available to you. So in video games, it's getting the best gear. Maybe you're enchanting it with specific enchantments. Maybe you're kind of like, depending on what the game is, putting like gems in it to give it better. I'm making WoW references now, World of Warcraft references now. But basically, you want to get to a point where you get as close as possible to 100% efficiency for your character. The same is true for MEV and for just extractable value in general. When you're doing MEV on chain, what you're trying to do is maximize the amount of value that you can extract from whatever type of MEV that you're doing with kind of like the tools that you have available to you. And take that to its logical conclusion, MEV can end up actually very, very bad for a crypto network. But there's tools being worked on, obviously, to mitigate a lot of the toxic MEV, to make it fairer, more democratized, to make sure that we don't get to that point where it starts destabilizing the chain, because it could one day lead to that. Like, it just depends, right? There's no point saying it can't lead to that, because it certainly can. But within the traditional finance system, I mean, there's MEV, but the thing is, it's closed off, it's opaque, it's kind of like permissioned, it's not democratized, and it's kind of like they attempt to regulate it away, but they can't really, right? I mean, insider kind of, I guess, like information is a type of like EV, not minor extractable value, but it's a type of EV, because you're using that insider information to extract value from the market, and you're using information that the market does not have access to. So obviously that's illegal in securities, but it's so hard to enforce. I mean, like, look at how blatantly a lot of the politicians in the US do insider trading, and there's just no enforcement at all there. And then look at just Wall Street in general and how blatantly they do it there. So insider trading is extremely hard to enforce, and I would say that there's probably a very small percentage that actually gets caught and gets enforced on. And the same is true for kind of like things like extracting value out of the traditional markets and out of crypto. I mean, there's no enforcement in crypto. Like, anyone can do MEV on kind of like the chain, and the way that we are trying to solve MEV is via these kind of like tools such as flashbots and kind of like doing upgrades on the base layer to make it so that it's more democratized, fairer, and we kind of get rid of as much toxic MEV as possible. So when the concept of MEV comes up, it's a lot more nuanced than what the Bank of International Settlement says here. But I mean, I don't really expect them to have the nuanced views, and they're kind of like flooding, I guess, crypto here. But it was still wild to see them tweeting about this, I guess, because the BIS is obviously a huge organization in the traditional finance world, and for them to be tweeting about MEV here is pretty funny to me, at least. All right, so the latest in the Three Arrows Capital drama here is a tweet from DB, which is referring to the Block article where they said FTX, Deribit, and BitMEX have liquidated Three Arrows Capital's positions. Sources tell the Block. Three Arrows owes BitMEX around $6 million, said one of the sources. Now, from everything that I've seen, Sue, Zhu, and Kyle Davies, the two co-founders of Three Arrows Capital, have been uncontactable. No one can get in contact with them. They've seriously just ghosted everyone. That's so bad. Like, I can't even begin to describe how bad that is. Not only are they not paying their debts, they're not even talking to people about it. So I can't see I really can't see a world in which they don't end up in jail as well. Like, I know I've said this about what's his name, Do Kwon before, and with Terra, and that, you know, I'm still kind of pretty confident that he's eventually going to end up with either paying out massive fines in lawsuits or serving some sort of jail time. But I mean, at least he was there, and at least he was able to be contacted. Three Arrows have taken this to the next level, and like not being able to be contacted, not even being able to contact any kind of like lawyers, from what I know, that's like next level. This is like, I mean, this is you can prove intent here. Like, when it comes to criminal cases, it's all about intent, right? So if you can prove intent to defraud, if you can prove intent to kind of like, I guess, not pay their debts back, which is pretty easy to prove if they're not even being able to be contacted, if they're just kind of like on the run, so to speak, well, then it's much easier to prove this case. Now, whether that results in jail time or not is a whole nother ball game, right? Could result in a massive fine, a settlement, and then it usually does with financial cases. So, but still, guys, like the point of bringing this up again is that, like, I know I go on about leverage all the time, but the thing is that what I think the main lesson you should take away from this is that, like, it doesn't matter how much money you have, leverage kills anyone and everyone, kind of like depending how degen you want to get with it, because the market can move so quickly against you. And I know I've spoken about this a lot, but I really do get scared sometimes that like a lot of people, they'll see the kind of like, I guess, quote unquote bottom that they think we're in right now, and be like, oh wow, the price is so cheap, ETH is so cheap, I don't have enough money to buy as much as I want, so I'll just do a little bit of leverage, right? And leverage can be addicting, so I'll just do a little bit here, and then the price moves up again, right? So, like, let me give you kind of like an example here of how you can get quickly wrecked, very quickly wrecked. Say you buy in, and the ETH is at $1,000. You take on some leverage. You have a liquidation price of, I don't know, $700 or something like that, right? To start with, you think you're relatively safe. You're like, $700, it can't possibly go to that. Or maybe your liquidation price is $500. Maybe I'll do it at $500 just to illustrate a point, because that right now would seem safe to a lot of people. Then the price starts going up. Say it goes up to $1,200, $1,300. You start getting FOMO. You're like, oh crap, I didn't buy enough. I need to buy more. So you take out more from your, I guess, make a vault, for an example. You take out more DAI, you buy more ETH. Your liquidation price creeped up again. It goes up to, what, $600, $700 or something like that. You're like, oh, it's fine. The price is at $1,300 now, and it kind of like the math works, right? Like, it was at $500 when ETH was $1,000. Now it's at $700 when ETH is $1,300. It's the same thing, right? Okay, let's keep going. Price skyrockets, $1,700, $1,800. You're like, oh my God, the bull market's back. I'm going to buy more. And then your liquidation price ends up at $1,000. And then you're like, no, but it's safe. It's safe. It's basically the same as what it was when I first entered. Okay. And then the market dumps. And then it goes down. You're like, oh no, this is just a correction. It's fine. It's a correction. We're going to go back up. The bull market's back. It's fine. And then it keeps going down. You start panicking. You're like, oh shit, I need to sell some things to pay back my debt. You start selling things. You start paying down the debt, but you can't pay it all down because you bought at a higher price. So your liquidation price doesn't get back to that original 500 that you had it at. Maybe you can get it down to 900. Maybe you can get it down to 850. And then it kind of like slices to 1,000 and goes to that, and you get liquidated, right? So you can see how easily it can happen, like, and how quickly it can happen without you even noticing, because you basically think that you're playing it safe, when in reality, all you're doing is getting trapped. There's this common terms in kind of like trading of a bull and a bear trap. And what that basically means is that the market at any given time can trap people in their positions where they've basically levered up at a higher price, and the price goes down and they're trapped. They're like, oh, I don't want to exit yet, because if I exit now, I'm taking a loss, and I'll have to find money elsewhere to pay back my debt. So they wait for the market to go back up, but the market doesn't go back up. The market keeps going down. And I think that's exactly what happened to Three Arrows here, right? They got caught in a massive bull trap. They levered up too much and they got liquidated, and then they just didn't have the money to pay back their debts. So that's just I think a very clear way of illustrating how dangerous leverage can be, especially when you think the market is going up, especially if you're a newer person and you're not used to the extreme volatility of crypto. That's where most people get wrecked, I think. Even if you think you're playing it safe, that's where most people end up getting wrecked. And hopefully that kind of illustrates what I'm talking about when I say that leverage is extremely dangerous. It is not something that I would ever recommend anyone to use. And if you do use it, you need to be extremely careful with how you use it. And you need to keep your emotions in check. I think the people who use leverage best are the ones that are able to keep their emotions in check. Because as you've seen with what happened with Three Arrows, doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter how much experience you think you have, doesn't matter how much like winning you've had in the past, everyone can get caught off guard by the market and be blindsided by it. And at the end of the day, it's a casino game. And like eventually in a casino, you have maybe you have a win streak, but eventually you lose. And you could lose big, depending on how much. I mean, it's the same concept, right? Like imagine if you're on a winning streak at a blackjack table, and then you're like, oh, I can't lose, right? You're feeling on top of the world, and you bet it all, and then you lose it all, right? Like, I'm sure you guys have seen stories of this and kind of like seen movies about this and heard plenty of stories about it. It's the same concept, really, at the end of the day. So just something to keep in mind when it comes to leverage, I think, something critically important to keep in mind. And hopefully, like if you are taking on leverage, you understand what you're doing, but all I can do is warn you guys. Like I can't force you guys not to take on leverage. I can't force you guys to kind of like buy ETH at a certain price, sell at a certain price. Like I'm never going to do I'm never going to tell you what to do either. I'm just going to give you kind of like the advice that I can give you around what I've seen with leverage and kind of like impart some of my wisdom on you. But I'm going to leave it at that because I've spoken about leverage too much lately, but I still think it's important. So I'll kind of like leave it at that for now. All right, so Robbie Ferguson from Immutable shared a pretty cool teaser video today, which I'll link in the YouTube description below for you to check out. It actually got me pretty hyped. So he basically said, stoked to launch Immutable's next chapter, powering the next generation of Web3 games. We're on a mission to transform digital property rights, starting with gaming. The next billion Web3 users will come from games. We're building so that they can do it securely, with scale, on layer 2. So disclaimer, I'm an immutable investor here. You guys know that, but just want to get that out of the way. But what I want to focus on here is not so much what Immutable is doing, but more so around kind of like where, the belief that we're going to have a lot of adoption from crypto games or crypto gaming or I guess play to earns, things like that. I do think that's true to an extent. I do think that a lot of people see gaming and see how popular it is, and I'm automatically assume that, okay, all these people are going to come into crypto if we do crypto games. We're going to onboard hundreds of millions of gamers. It's going to be awesome. It's not going to work like that. How it's going to work is that we need to basically create fun games and then enhance them with crypto primitives. We can't create a crypto game that's not fun and expect sustainability from that. We have plenty of examples of this over the past, and I've spoken about some of them before. Because all that leads to is a pump and dump, and then you get a pump and dump in both the price of the assets associated with the game and also the users for that game. So I think Immutable is doing it right. They've been building like for a while now. They've built Gods Unchained. There's a bunch of kind of like other games being built on Immutable, Guild of Guardians, Illuvium, a bunch of others out there. And I think that they're really focused on partnerships and integrations with AAA studios and with indie studios to make sure that they make fun games and enjoyable games first, and then enhance them with crypto primitives, with NFTs, with kind of like blockchain kind of technology in general. I think that's the right approach to take. And that's why I'm so bullish on Immutable. And that's why they're one of my only kind of like gaming related investments within the crypto space, is because I think they're doing it right. I think most are doing it wrong, but I think when it comes to Web3 gaming, Immutable is definitely doing it right there. But that's not an endorsement of the IMX token, guys, or anything like that. As I said, I'm a kind of like Series A investor in them, but I back them because I truly believe in their vision, and I want to be part of that journey as well. So I think they're going to do very, very well. I think they're already doing quite well, but as crypto gaming gets more popular, Immutable is definitely going to be a front runner here. All right, so I put out a quick tweet today where I said, all right, I'm going to clear this up for all of you real quick. BlockFi, Celsius, and other similar platforms are not decentralized finance. They are centralized finance services that may utilize DeFi protocols in order to generate yield for their customers. Stop calling them DeFi. And I have a second tweet here, which I'll get to in a sec. Guys, the simplest way to think about this is to think of BlockFi and Celsius as a user of these DeFi protocols. So a user like yourself or a user like me. If I sent all of my funds to you right? I'm trusting that you're not going to take my funds. I'm trusting that you're not going to basically throw my funds into something and lose them all. I'm trusting that you're not going to over leverage my funds. I'm trusting that you're going to adhere to what you said when I gave you my funds to generate me that yield and to do so in a safe manner. It's the same thing. That's not DeFi. Yes, you're using DeFi protocols, but you yourself are not a decentralized protocol. You are not a DeFi tool. You are a centralized tool at the end of the day. The same is true for BlockFi, Celsius, centralized exchanges, every other platform that you can think of that basically you put money into and you no longer have a custody over it. Not your keys, not your coins, right? So I'm sick of the media in particular. It's not so much people in crypto, it's more so the mainstream media referring to BlockFi and Celsius and other platforms as DeFi. And I know with Celsius, it's because the founder and Celsius itself referred to them as DeFi, which was so wrong. Like that was, and that was actually happening, I think, in 2019 or 2020. And that's where the first alarm bells went off for me about Celsius. And that's why I've been warning about them for a very long time. But like, don't call them DeFi. And when you see people calling them DeFi, call it out. Like, I think it's very, very important to do this. And the reason why I think it's important to do this is because, or at least one of the reasons why, is because if we keep calling these things DeFi, regulators aren't going to be able to delineate between a Celsius and a Maker protocol, for example, or a Uniswap protocol. They're going to bucket it all into the same kind of like a thing, and they're going to apply regulations to them as if they're the same thing, when they're vastly different, completely different. So I think it's extremely important to keep that in mind. And then the second tweet that I put out, I said, seriously, guys, it's not even just about the mislabeling. The DeFi projects building for long-term sustainability are trying to do so in a transparent and safe manner. These CeFi ecosystems are opaque as fuck, and you have no idea what's happening behind the scenes. And you truly don't. You have absolutely no idea what they're doing with your money. You could have breadcrumbs here and there, like you can look on chain, see, what addresses belong to which kind of like protocol, see where they are, but it becomes very, very hard, not protocol, each kind of like centralized service. It becomes very, very hard to track everything that they're doing. And anything that they're doing in the traditional system or in the CeFi system, you have absolutely no oversight on. Whereas with DeFi, you can see everything on chain. Like, it doesn't even matter if it's centralized DeFi, which is a bit of a misnomer there, but you get what I'm saying, right? It doesn't even matter if these DeFi projects aren't really decentralized on chain. They've got like admin keys or multi-sigs or anything like that. You can still see what everything happening on chain because the chain is transparent. The chain is trustworthy. You don't have to trust anyone. That's the whole point of a blockchain, for God's sake, right? So do not trust these CeFi services. Don't even trust the ones that you think are the most legit, like Coinbase, for example. Like, I'm not saying that Coinbase is bad, but you should never trust them. Like, we're in this space to build trustless systems. We're not in this space to recreate the traditional finance system with services like BlockFi and Celsius, guys. Like, this is not the long-term vision. The long-term vision is healthy, sustainable, safe, transparent DeFi protocols that we all get to tap into, and we all get a choice. We can either tap into them via centralized services or centralized front ends, or we can use our own wallets to do so. And I think that eventually we can get to a point where we build such amazing wallets and interfaces for these places that users do get that non-custodial kind of experience without the kind of complexities that come along with that. I feel so strongly about this because this is at the very core of why I'm in this ecosystem, is to build better shit, not to build the same shit with a coat of crypto paint on it. That's boring, that's bad, and that's going to bring bad regulations with it. We need to build better tools, and that's why I'm so bullish on actual DeFi and the boring DeFi that people think are boring, like Maker, Uniswap, Compound, Aave, Curve, whatever. The ones that people think are boring, they're the most interesting to me because they actually give a shit about building something sustainable and building something different. They don't just care about juicing up the yields, putting in Ponzi-nomics and kind of like making a bunch of money. No, these people, these teams, they actually want to build decentralized finance. And they're working very hard towards that goal, and they're working under very kind of like shitty conditions towards that goal as well. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there because I'm going to go over time on today's episode. But guys, like, at the very, very heart of everything that we're building is the transparency aspect. And with CeFi, you get none of that. You don't get any transparency. You throw your money, it may as well be going into a black box. Maybe you'll get it back eventually, but a lot of people don't, especially on platforms like Celsius, especially with kind of like Terra, which was fake DeFi, like so centralized that it just collapsed. Obviously, there was other things that played into it, but you get what I'm saying here. Anyway, leaving it at that, moving on quickly to the rest of the stuff I wanted to get through. So rETH actually ended up getting onboarded to Maker as collateral. So the kind of vote went ahead. As I said, that the no vote was ahead, but Yes, ended up winning here. Really, really cool to see this. So there was 65%-ish in favor of onboarding it as collateral with 35% against, which means it will be integrated as a collateral option within MakerDAO. So you can put up your rETH as collateral to borrow DAI against it. Obviously, this is leverage, right? I just gave you a rant about leverage, but I mean, if you're going to leverage, you're going to do it. Don't mind me ranting about it. But you don't necessarily have to draw DAI and buy ETH with it, or buy more rETH with it and do leverage staking. You can basically take DAI as essentially a loan, or maybe you want to spend it on something. Maybe you have a lot of rETH and you want to buy a new car. You can go do that, right? And maybe you're like very confident you can pay it back because you plan to pay that debt back with your income. That's not leverage trading. That's literally just taking a loan, reusing your existing assets as collateral, which is quite normal to do. So there's a key difference there as well. But I've already spoken enough about leverage, so I won't talk about that. But yeah, I'm glad to see this pass. Like it's really awesome that we have both kind of like things there now, like STETH and rETH on MakerDAO. If you are an rETH holder, well, now you can put it to work if you'd like to. So another short thread here from Pseudotheos today, just wanted to highlight, it's about application-specific rollups that will be built on L3 and not L2. This is what Pseudotheos believes. So there's only a kind of like a few tweets here that you can kind of read to get the gist of this. I just wanted to highlight this thread. I'm not going to read it now. Definitely go check it out. I'll link it in the YouTube description. Interesting project I came across today called Starksheet. Their landing page is now live. So basically, you can go to starksheet.xyz. What this is a spreadsheet built on Starknet. Each cell is a dynamic NFT and each sheet is a collection. Cell as an NFT brings granular cell ownership and unlimited data. This is actually pretty cool. I like stuff like this because it's different and because it's uniquely enabled by layer 2s on Ethereum. You can't do this on layer 1. It would just be too gas cost intensive. It would be too slow. It wouldn't really make sense. But essentially, this is their landing page right now. I think you can click a few things maybe, or no, I don't think you can click anything yet. Maybe the Twitter. Yeah, you can click like the Twitter links down here and everything. But I'm curious to see how this evolves. I followed their account today on Twitter because I want to see how this project evolves. But cool to see this. I'll link it in the YouTube description for you to check out. And finally here, just a quick shout out to something I forgot to mention yesterday. David Hoffman put together a really great piece for Bankless around projects that he's bullish on in the bear market. Now, he got a little bit of shit for this because people were like, oh, you're just shilling your bags. I mean, guys, like, at the end of the day, if someone's bullish on a project, they're going to invest in it. Like, you don't shill things that like you're bullish on and don't have an ownership stake in. Like, you know what I'm talking about? So I think that was a bit weird that people were commenting on that. But anyway, you should read his blog post, and it's pretty detailed and actually gives like legit reasons why you should be bullish on these things. And a full disclaimer here, I'm pretty much like an investor in most of the protocols he's listed here as well. So I mean, I think. There's only 2 on this list out of the 8 that he has here that I'm not not an angel investor in, which is quite funny. But anyway, me and David are usually part of the same kind of like cap tables. But essentially, the reason we invested in these things is because we're bullish on them. We think they're interesting projects. And I actually think he did a really good job of highlighting projects that you may not have heard of before. Maybe Refuel watchers and listeners will have heard of it before because I've talked about these projects before, such as Obel and LeFi and Vaults and Tracer, Block Native, Euler, Aztec, and Disco. I don't know if I've mentioned Disco before, but they're all there. You can read this blog post. I'll link it in the YouTube description. But I'm going to end it there for today. I've ranted enough. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the newsletter. Join the Discord channel. And I'll catch you all next week. Thanks everyone.